Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about the maturation of pituitary gland, the anterior and also the posterior part. Here I'm going to talk about the origins of pituitary gland. So let's just start it. The posterior pituitary gland and the anterior pituitary gland, they have different origins. It means that they both come from ectoderm, but different parts of ectoderm. What I mean? The posterior pituitary gland comes from the floor of the encephalon. What is the encephalon? The encephalon consists of several parts. For example, hypothalamus, thalamus, and some other parts. And the floor of the encephalon is going to make my posterior pituitary gland. It's going to grow and make my posterior, and part of it will make my posterior pituitary gland. Some other parts of it will make the third ventricle and other parts of my brain. But today I'm going to talk about the posterior pituitary gland and also anterior. So the floor of the diencephalon is going to grow and make my posterior pituitary gland. And also the oropharyngeal ectoderm, or the roof of the mouth or primitive mouth, is going to make my anterior pituitary gland. And in here I have the Rathke's pouch. So what happens? The the roof of the mouth or the oropharyngeal ectoderm is going to make a pouch, and this pouch is going to be called Rathke's pouch. In here, this pouch is growing. As you see, this pouch is growing. This is the pouch, and finally I have the remnant of this pouch in here. So what happens? The anterior pituitary gland, which comes from oropharyngeal ectoderm, or which comes from the roof of the mouth or the primitive mouth, in here makes a pouch, and this pouch grows, and this pouch is called Rathke's pouch, which is which in here I have the oral ectoderm, and also this Rathke's pouch grows because of stimulation of Wnt5a. It's a particle which stimulates the growth of this Rathke's pouch, and as my anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary gland is growing, I have the growth of sphenoid bone and some other bones in my skull. But so what happens? This bone is growing, the bone is growing, and this bone is called a sphenoid bone, the bone which is located in the brain. And as this bone is growing, my anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary gland are growing too. So what happens next? This Rathke's pouch will separate itself and will grow and come inside, and this anterior pituitary gland will separate itself from the pharynx. Okay, from my primitive mouth which I had, it's going to be pharynx. Everything is growing simultaneously, and my pharynx will be separated from my anterior pituitary, and it's going to just hang itself or like a stem to be located in here. As you see, the anterior pituitary gland is not going to have direct relation with my hypothalamus or with my diencephalon. What I want to tell you right now is this, that the anterior pituitary gland, which is called the adenohypophyseal part, which is the anterior pituitary gland, does not have a direct relation. It's going to just stick itself to this posterior pituitary gland and just stick there, okay? So it doesn't have a direct relation with my hypothalamus, but the posterior pituitary gland comes from the diencephalon. It comes from the floor of the diencephalon. So it has a direct relation with my hypothalamus. What I mean? I mean that the posterior pituitary gland, the origin of it is the nervous system. It is the origin of it is the floor of the diencephalon. The origin of it is a part of ectoderm, which nervous system consists of, which has nerves and neurons, and because of that it is called the neurohypophyseal part. So it is the neurohypophyseal part, but this is the adenohypophyseal part. So they have different cells. This has nervous cells and neurons, and this has cuboidal or a little columnar cells. But the roles of them are different too. So because they have different cells, so this is responsible to have some cells which themselves will make hormones. But this is going to just receive the hormones which comes from the hypothalamus, which are made from hypothalamus, and hypothalamus is going to make them, and they will be brought in here, stored in here, and whenever a stimulation happens and the body needs they will go and be secreted into the blood. And hormones are going to be secreted in the blood. That is why they are called hormones. So what I wanted to add is this, that the anterior pituitary gland is going to be separated from my pharynx. And in here, I still have my Rathke's pouch, but in here, and it's going to move like this. And finally, from my anterior pituitary gland, I have different parts, and it is the origin of different parts. One of the parts is a pars distalis. One of them is a pars tuberalis, and also pars intermedia. This part is pars intermedia. It's the intermediate between this anterior pituitary gland and also posterior pituitary gland, and it is originated from my anterior pituitary gland, from the anterior part, and it is called the pars intermedia. In here, I have a cleft. There is a cleft in here. There is a space in here, and this cleft is called hypophyseal cleft. So what I wanted to tell you is this, that this posterior pituitary gland is called pars nervosa. It is related to the nervous system. It has neurons, and it is called pars nervosa or neurohypophyseal part. And in here I have my infundibulum, and infundibulum is the relation between the diencephalon or the hypothalamus and also the posterior pituitary. As you see in here, they have direct relation, but the anterior pituitary gland does not have the direct relation. So because it does not have direct relation, it must make its relation, and its relation is going to be made by capillaries and by the hypophyseal portal system, which in the next video I'm going to talk about it. There are two nets of capillaries, and between them is a portal system which helps this anterior pituitary gland to have relation, indirect relation, with my hypothalamus. And in here I have an eminence, which is the median eminence, and finally the optic chiasma grows in here. And what I wanted to tell, the third ventricle in here and the encephalon in here, infundibulum, as I told you, and that's it. So this is how my pituitary gland grows. Pituitary gland is from ectoderm. It comes from ectoderm, but different parts of ectoderm. For example, it comes from the neuroectoderm, which is the floor of the diencephalon, which in here, finally, I will have the third ventricle as the floor of the diencephalon too. But the anterior pituitary gland comes from oropharyngeal ectoderm, or comes from primitive mouth, or comes from the roof of the mouth, which later I have the pharynx, and this pituitary gland is just being separated and just stick itself to the infundibulum, to the posterior pituitary gland. And finally we have the pars tuberalis, and finally we have the pars tuberalis. So that's it. It was all about the growth and maturation of the pituitary gland. See you in the next video.